What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be covering part 4 of the settings menu. So this is essentially going to finalize the rest of our button controls. We're going to essentially have this other section here where now we have a new icon that keeps track of what our confirmed choice was. So when we make these choices, if we are to exit the menu and then go back into the menu, our options are there and they're already outlined to say these are the ones that we have currently selected. We're going to have an additional icon on there where we have the one that is selected and it's also the current option. You see that? So we have one with just the outline, one with the outline and the fill. And we're going to be able to go choose our options, back out, and then again come in and see all of these here where they should be. So this is going to essentially finalize all the button logic, as I said, so we'll be able to do anything we want with buttons on our settings menu. So we're going to be wrapping up this today, and we'll be well on our way to a finalized settings menu. Alright. We are on episode 131 of the fighting game tutorial series. We've got many episodes to go, but look how far we've come. If you'd like to get caught up in the series and see how we've done everything that we have to date, then feel free to click this icon in the top right corner right here. Otherwise, you can go ahead and just click on the first episode of the settings menu if you're interested in seeing how we set up everything for this custom navigation settings menu since the very beginning. Put the icon to that episode right there. Alright, and at this point we're good to get started. So this is another episode where all we need is the settings screen. So I went ahead and went to my widget and found the settings screen widget that we've been working in. Refresher, this is what it looks like. This is what it's looked like for quite a while now. We are going to add a few new variables, a few new functions, and update some old functions. So there's quite a bit going on in this episode. So we're going to just start in event construct and go with it there. So in the event graph, I haven't changed anything until the very end of event construct. Alright, so what we have to do at the end of event construct is fill out the options that have been chosen previously. Now, we don't save them anywhere, so it'll only store what the game instance stores. When we load things in, our options and our settings will be loaded in as well. That way we know whatever options we chose in a previous play session can also be carried on and continued in this one. But for now, all we have to do is figure out which ones were previously selected in the settings menu, or which ones are currently selected, I should say, and display them to the user. So this is all the logic that we actually need to do to make that happen, but of course we need to actually make these things exist. The determine chosen options and display chosen options functions you see here are new functions that we've made. So let's start there. Let's make two new functions. I called one determine chosen options and the other one display chosen options. So determine chosen options is going to basically determine what buttons, in this case, or any of our options on our settings menu, which ones are active, what values they're set to, and how they should appear. Now, display chosen options is the one that's actually going to change the style of the buttons and make them look a specific way. Alright, so let's go into determine chosen options. I have it here. Okay, and it looks complicated, but it's really not. So what we're going to do is I want to add an integer input parameter to determine chosen options here. You can do this by clicking the little plus sign on the input parameters or inputs section of this function. I called it row to determine. So we have to know what row we're looking at to know what the option should do. For example, if we're on the number of rounds row, we have to determine what each of these inputs does. Now, we set that up in the confirm selection, remember? We had those functions to actually set these values in the game instance. However, we have to know which one of these is going to get the effect around it. And currently, without having some sort of array of what objects are stored and confirmed, we'd have to check the game instance value against all these individual values to actually make it where they will show up as, okay, this is the option that we've selected. Because of that, what we want to do is we want to figure out what inputs or what buttons or options are selected, and then we want to store them in an array that we can use to then display those to the user. Okay, so row to determine is the row that we are currently looking at, because the logic could be different. In the case of the buttons, okay, these are the round times and the number of rounds. They're different, but they're very similar. The is device for multiple players or the all players on one device, that is a little bit different. And these two above that I haven't filled out are these sliders right here. Okay. So again, the sliders will be in the next episode, so I've left them blank for now. But we still want to have the other options available to us. So this determines the row, so we know what data we're going to fill out and how we're going to customize it, what we're going to set and return. So we need that. We also need an output parameter, and that's going to output the current button. The reason we output this is so that we can actually return it directly here. So when we return this, it will display those changes on the button. We'll change the style depending on what we need. So that's what we're going to be returning. This is specifically for buttons in this case. Again, when we do the slider and drop downs, we can switch it to just a general widget and then make a few changes there. But right now, everything we're dealing with is buttons, so that is fine to keep that way. We want to grab a switch on the int that comes from the row to determine. So quite literally, you can drag off your parameter here, do switch on int, and then you can click the little add pin to get as many as you need. For me, I need row 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I technically don't need 5 because as soon as I hit the back button, we're going to return. I'm not going to go through all the effort of like trying to highlight this as this is your selected option because that doesn't make sense. It's not an actual setting or option in this menu. This is just a button that we're hovering to navigate the menu. So you can see I did not fill out row 5, or a default in this case, but you could put a default if you'd like. I just don't feel it's necessary. We're covering all our bases here. Now, what you can actually do is you don't even need to put 5. I was just showing you that I did not fill it out. So I was showing it to explicitly say we did not fill out that row. So we got 0 through 4. The first two are sliders, so I'm skipping them for today's episode. 2, 3, and 4 relate to round times, number of rounds, and the all players on one device, respectively. So we look at row 2, and here's what we're going to do. We are going to compare the round time of the given value to the round time that we have assigned in the game mode. All right. So what I've done is I've made variables, added a variable for anything that's more than 2 options. I made an array of that type. So I made a float array, which to do this, you can add a new variable, change the type to float, and then change the pill to array. Now, I've already made one, so I'm going to delete this guy. But I've called it selectable round times. Once you compile and save, you'll be able to fill out default values for this. What I assigned it were the default values that I have on the settings menu. Since this is not really customizable, we're giving them options of 30, 60, 90, 99, and infinite. I've given them those same options here. By the way, to add values, all you have to do is go down to the default values section here and add elements to this array. And you can manually put these in. So I have 30, 60, 90, 99, and -1. Infinite is a little bit different, so we'll cover that later. But 30, 60, 90, 99 are all options that this round time variable could actually hold. So, with that in mind, if any of the values in the selectable round times matches this, then we'll know exactly what button it ties to, because logically, we know 30 seconds is going to go to the 30 button, 60 to this one, 90 to that one, 99 to that one, and infinite will go to this one. So when looping through this array, as long as you put them in the same order that you do on the options menu, you can compare it. Okay, so let's do this together. So here is my float array that I made. I can do a for each loop. It's not necessary that you use the break. I was going to use the break for a cool little trick, but I never ended up using it because I didn't think it actually helped us in any way. So you can just do a for each loop. And then what you can do is compare the element equal float to the game instance reference that we made and set in the event construct round time. Okay. And then compare these. Then you see I bring it into a branch, loop through it. And if this is true, I want to do a switch on int. Okay. What this is this is going to be the selection in the row. So for example, we know we're already on this row. That's what the first switch does. And we know that we found a round time that is equal to a value in this array. We have to get the array index since it's in the same order as the switch will be. We're going to bring it into the selection here. And then we're going to add pins based on all the values we want. So I'm going to delete this now because we have it right below. All this is good. Okay. So let's focus on the switch now. So this array index, if this is index 0, you can look at the array, say index 0 is 30. So if it's 30, I know that the round time 1 button, this guy right here, is the button we want to display the selection for. We want to say this is our current selection. This is what our modes are set to, 30 seconds. Okay. If it's index 1, then we know it's going to be 60. Index 2, you know it's going to be 90. Index 3, 99. Now, for 4, it's never going to be equal here. You see this? So we're going to actually have to use we're going to check on completed to do infinite logic. We'll do that in a little bit because it's going to be a little bit confusing. And I'm going to get the rest of this down. We'll come back and address that. You can also assign the default node to a value as well if you'd like, but it's not required. All right. And then to get this, just in case you're not aware, remember these buttons come from our widget. They're automatically made as long as you have them checked as variable. For example, round time 1 button is variable, so it automatically shows up in the list. You can just drag it under the screen. Now, since this function outputs a button, when we do return node, add return node, you're going to have this option here. You're going to drag your button into it. Okay? So you do that for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or however many indices you have, how many different options you have. All right, perfect. Now, let's go to the number of rounds. At this point, it should go a lot faster because you can actually copy this logic almost completely and paste it down below. I copied it so that visually they look the same, but we'll go over the changes anyway. So I've also made a new array now. This is an integer array. So the same way you made a float array, just make sure the type is integer first. Compile, and then you can add default values to it. This is selectable number of rows. So my options for that in my menu are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So guess what? In my array, selectable number of rows, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So as you can imagine, I do for each loop. I check the array element against the num rounds variable in the game instance. If they are equal, I then do a switch on int on the array index from the for loop to see if we have chosen these buttons, and if we have, we want to make sure we display the outline. Okay, what we're really doing here is you see how there's that blue outline around this button. That's because 99 is the selected choice. We're determining which one we're currently on. Same with the 3 and same with enabled here. Okay, so we do the switch statement and we have number of rounds 1, number of rounds 2, number of rounds 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and hopefully that makes sense. We have a simpler version here. So if it didn't make sense, it's fine. This one should make sense. Then you should see why the other ones are basically the same premise, just with less options. Now, I don't have an array for this last one because I only have true or false. I only have 2 options, so if it's not true, I know it's false, and if it's not false, I know it's true. I don't need an array for that. But say we're on row 4, which does happen to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my keyboard mode. And so what we're going to do is we are going to, instead of looping through an array or something like that, I don't have to make any variables for this. All I do is I grab the game instance reference, check this Boolean, put it into a branch right here. And then, depending on if it's true or false, I set the enabled button or the disabled button to be the one that's returned. Okay, so if this is true, this is the enable button that we're returning. If it's false, it's the disabled button that we're returning. Now we're basically just doing this on a larger scale for these two. Hopefully that makes more sense now. Now that you see it with only 2 options, we're just looping through more options to make this easier and more appealing. The next thing we want to go to is the display chosen options. So this function, if you didn't make it already, you can go ahead and make it now. And I've called it display chosen options. I've added an input parameter of a button, and I've called it the current button. So the determine chosen options returns a button. So this is finding basically what button it is that we have to apply the style to. Whether it is I'm calling the button if it has the outline selected, and I'm calling the button if it has the outline and the fill SAH for selected and hovered, because technically the fill without the outline is called hovered. If it's confusing, it doesn't really matter. The point is I have 2 different styles, as I mentioned earlier. I have the outline and then the outline with the fill. And this function, display chosen options, is basically going to determine which one of those styles we need to apply to the button, and then add it to an array, which we'll set up in a second. That way we know what options to keep in that way. We don't want to just do it on the row, and we don't want to just do it on the one button. It has to be, every row should have an option selected if it requires it, and every row needs to be able to keep track of them independently. So if we change one, it doesn't affect other buttons in other rows. Okay? So, long story short, this button, you don't have to set this up yet, but just look at how this goes. Determine chosen options returns a current button. Display chosen options takes in a current button. The button literally transfers from one function to the next. Okay, so that's how we're going to set that up. So just keep that in mind. So let's go into display chosen options, and we have our current button here. Now this is going to be basically the same as we have this function called update button visuals. Now what this function did is when we moved buttons, it changed the style to the hover variant if we were on that button. Otherwise, we were calling clear path selections, which was resetting them back to their gray state. So saying, oh, we have nothing to do with this button. We're not currently over this button. So I was calling this update button visuals before. That's the function we had for moving. Let's rename this now because we have different visuals. Okay, so instead of update button visuals, let's call it display hovered options. Or option, really, but we can say display hovered options. That way we know this is the one we're currently on. Chosen options are the ones that are actually selected, and hovered are the ones that the player is navigating to currently. Okay, so let's make that distinction. That way we know. Okay, so display hovered options. So when we're moving along, we have to show to the player, we have to fill in the button, say, this is the button you're on, right? And so to do that, as I mentioned, we had these nodes right here. Okay, but we've added a bunch of stuff since then. So we have to make sure of a few other things now. One thing we have to make sure of is that if we are already on a button that is confirmed with the outline, we actually need to display something else that is not just the fill. Let me explain why to you. So if we go in here, and we can go in and we can select an option. So see, we have 30 with the outline. When I move over to it, now it is the standard selected. It's not the outline with the fill. Okay, that's the outline with the fill. If I just move over to it, that's just the fill. There's no outline. They are different. It's important to note that. So we want that effect. Okay? So this is why we have to know what is currently selected and what's not. So what I'm going to do is add a new array yet again, add another variable. I've called this one confirmed button options. And I made it a button array. So literally button, object reference, and make it an array. Unlike the other arrays, you don't put default values in here. They get added based on the values we find from the determine chosen options. Okay? But here's what we have to do. After we check and see, oh, this button is valid, instead of setting the style on it, we have two different styles that we could set now. It's not just the one. So we have to see if this button is in the list of confirmed button options, because it's going to change what our button looks like, what our style is. So bring the confirmed button options onto the screen. Type contains item. Okay, and it's basically going to see if this button reference that comes into the function is within this array. Now, I did not Boolean to basically say, if it's not in this array, it's true. Okay? So we do a branch. So the true is if it's not in the array. What that means is we're doing the fill with no outline. If it's false, we're doing the fill and the outline. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of this one. You see I have it right here above. If it's true, this is my old style box. I have my button P1 hover var1. Let me show you those before we go farther, just so you can see them one more time. Here's my UI. So here is my hover. It is just a fill. Let me look at my selected. It is just an outline. Now let me look at selected and hovered. It's the fill and the outline. They're all different, okay? So the one we want here is, this is our hover. This means that we are just navigating through it. It's not currently selected as the option in the game instance. If this is false, this means that this button reference was found within this array, meaning that it was an option that was selected. It's the currently selected option. Because of that, we want to go down here and we want to set the style differently, okay? We were setting it here to be the hover. Instead, we want to set this one to be the selected and hovered. This guy. What I did is I actually copied the set style, pasted it, moved in the button reference to the target, and then just changed the image here to be the P1 SAH. Okay? Then we were calling ClearPath selections. We still want to do that, so you don't have to change that. I just wanted to update this before we went any farther. What you can actually do now is copy this almost directly. Okay, so just go ahead and copy everything in this function. Move to your display chosen options function that we just made in today's episode. Not the one we just renamed, but the new one we made today. And you can go ahead and paste this in here. It's going to be very similar to what we have. It's going to be different, but it is going to be very similar. Okay, so you see we still have an isValid check. The button still goes through it and only does this logic if it's valid. We have two set styles with the button reference going in as the target. And we call ClearPath selections. But there are a few differences. The first difference is instead of checking the confirm button options array to see if we were in there, we're going to check the button we're currently navigating on. We're doing the exact opposite, okay? So let's put them side by side for a second. Instead of checking which buttons are confirmed, we're checking which button the player is highlighting currently, which one they're hovering over. All right? So we have this function called determine button to focus, which doesn't require any changes in today's episode. But basically what it did is it got the current row and the current selection the player was on, and it knew what to do with that information. Essentially, it filled in the box. So instead of being a gray button, it was the blue button. All right? What's important about the determine button to focus, though, is that it returns the button that it found that the player was navigating on and they were currently hovering over. So that return is what we're going to use here to check against the current button. All right, this is important. So let me show you what's going on here. Okay, we can use the determine button to focus to get the return, to get the button that the player is hovering. Then, if that button is not equal to the current button that gets passed in to this function, we are not on a button that is currently selected in that row. Okay, so right here, if these are not equal, if this is true, we just want the standard selected icon, okay? That's this guy, just the outline. We don't want the outline and fill. However, all right, if this is false, this means that the button that was passed into this function, so it's a chosen button, is also the button that the player navigated over. So that means it's a selected option, so it's got the outline, and it's the button the player is on, so it's got the fill. You know what that means is we're going to use our other style, our SAH, which is the outline and the fill. Okay? There's one additional thing we need to do in this function that we didn't do in the other. So in the other one, we were just calling clear path selections after that. But in this one, we have to add each button that goes through here to this confirm button options array. Okay, remember, this is to keep track of what buttons are in this array. So basically what buttons are outlined to say these are the options that are set up in the game instance. All right, so we have a button that gets passed in, so we can easily add this to the array. All we do is we grab our array, add. I recommend adding unique because if you confirm the same button, you don't necessarily want to add it more than once. Okay, so you're going to pass in your button reference. I have a bunch of reroute nodes, but you can do it right from here. However you clean it up is fine. And that's all you need. Then just call clear path selections with the button reference passed in, just like we did before. Okay? Now, I know that may have been pretty confusing, but basically what we're doing is we're getting the options that are selected by the player or by default. Then we're displaying them to the player on the settings menu. Okay? Now we can actually go ahead and set up this logic in event construct at this point. Okay, so here I am at the end of event construct after my last input action. And what I do is I actually do a loop through all my options. And I'm going to reset this to 0. Doesn't really matter. I'm just looping through all my rows here. So I'm supporting multiple rows, so it doesn't have to be static. It doesn't have to be this number. As we add more rows and update this value, this for loop will still work. So essentially, how you make that happen is I have this max selections in each row array, which we've set up in a previous episode. The number of elements we have is the number of rows we have. So we have 0 through 5, which is 6 rows. The last one is technically the back button, but doesn't really matter. The same premise applies. The reason I previously had 2 in my for loop is so I skipped the sliders. It's technically a little bit faster because I don't have to do the logic on them. However, it doesn't matter. We can do it there, and it's just not going to do anything because in determine chosen options, remember, we haven't filled out 1 and 2. So I'd recommend leaving it at 0, not at 2 like I had it. That way when we do the next episode, we're already set up. Basically, we're going to grab our get max selections in each row. We're going to get the length of it. And remember, this returns the actual number of elements, which is, so 0 through 5 is actually 6 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we actually need to subtract 1 because we want to grab the index, not the number. Then we can do a simple for loop, not for each loop, but a simple for loop. And then you can pass this in as the last index. The first index can be 0. All right? From there on, it's pretty straightforward. We need to use this index as the row for the determine chosen options. So just call it, pass in the index from the for loop, then call display chosen options and pass in the current button. At that point, you can run your game and see what you get. It may look actually pretty good, but there'll be two issues. When pressing confirm, your buttons are going to be reset and you're going to lose some of your styles. And also, when clearing past selections, so buttons you're not on anymore or that you haven't selected, not everything is going to look proper. It's going to overwrite some of your things that you don't want to overwrite. That's okay. That's just because we have to update these functions. So let's go ahead and go through them. I'm going to get rid of what we don't need because they can be confusing. So we need confirm selection and we need clear past selections. Let's actually do clear past selections first because it's easier to see what's happening with the other issues once clear past selections is fixed. So clear past selections was this function we made in another episode, and we had this make array here with this for each loop, this not equal to, and this branch. This branch led directly into the set style. So essentially what was happening is we were checking the button that came in here and saying, if we are not this button, okay, then we want to set it back to the standard button var 1, which really what it is it's the gray button. Because what we're doing is we're saying nothing is assigned to this. We're not hovered over it. We're not confirming it, whatever. But that's not always true now, okay? We have 4 different styles for our buttons, so we have to make sure we account for all of them. Okay? So everything that's in here is good. All this stuff that you have in yours, if you've been following the series, is good. But you can see I've added an additional branch now with an additional style. See, even if we're not selecting it when we're moving over it, we still have to make sure that it's not one of the confirmed options, because if it is a confirmed option, it should still be outlined. It shouldn't go back to the standard gray fill, no outline button. Okay? Now we only care. We're clearing past selections, or we're clearing other selections, so we only care still under the true branch, saying that we're not on the button here. Okay, so if we're not on any of those buttons from the array element, what we want to do is we want to grab our confirmed button options array. Yet again, get it. Then we want to do a contains item, and we want to grab the array element. Okay, and we want to pass in a not boolean. Remember, like we did before. So again, what this is saying is if this element in the array, if the button we're currently on through this array is not contained within this array here, then we're going to reset it to the standard button var 1. Okay, that's the true condition of this branch. But if it's false, that means that this button is within the confirmed button options array, meaning that it is one of the selected options or the default options, and it is currently active. So we want to outline it, the selected button. Okay, so if it's false, that means that it is within the array, which means we use the selected style. Okay. Now, with that fix out of the way, everything should work, except when you confirm the button, you might see some weird logic, like it doesn't actually give you the selected and hovered, the filled and outlined. That's because we need to go into confirm selection and update something as well. So let's go to confirm selection. And I've just cleaned this up a little bit because I thought it was ugly, but everything here is the same, except you'll notice that everything goes to a node afterward. Now, this is a little ugly, and you can definitely clean this up 100 different ways. So don't worry too much about this. But this logic has to occur after we set these values, or at least it should. That way we don't have to do additional checks. So what I'd recommend is just literally drawing a line from 1, making a reroute node, and then going off of the ends of every single option and going into here. Alternatively, all you can do something like return this into another function and just have that function handle this next set of logic. Either way, because I get this is super ugly, but there's a bunch of ways to clean it up. So it doesn't really matter how you handle it. Just make sure that they all go to the same spot afterward. And here is the final logic that we need to add to get our settings menu working with all of our styles and everything. So we need to make sure that when we confirm a selection that we get rid of the old confirmation. Okay, so we do need to clear the past selections, but we need to do that without getting rid of the new selection. So it has to be in a specific order. That's why I put them after we did all of these guys, okay? After we found out what button it was that we selected and all that good stuff, I've done this. So I've cleared the confirm button options, effectively making this array empty again. Once this array is empty, we can now fill out all of the things that we did, like in the event graph. When we got in here, we basically found all the things that should be outlined immediately. Even though there was no player input when the settings menu opened, it still grabbed the values that were set in the game instance and found what buttons should be outlined. Well, we're going to do that, except a little bit more advanced now, because we want to figure out the new option that the player selected and outline the buttons accordingly. Okay, so we're going to clear all the options from every row. Then we're going to loop through all the rows. And we're going to do basically the same thing that we did in the event construct, but with some more parameters. Okay, so grab max selections in each row again, right here. Get the length, subtract by 1 because we want the index, not the actual length. Start at 0, go to the last index of this result. In the loop, we want to check and make sure that it's not equal to our current row. This is important. We're effectively overwriting every single option. We're basically just saying clear all of our options that are selected and select new ones. There's actually a reason I'm doing this, and it's because you may want to have options that kind of default other options. Like, for example, if you have, say, a special like accessibility mode and you can toggle it on or off, you may want to toggle every other option under accessibility mode off by default. So if you have that sort of thing, then we just want to clear everything anyway, and we're going to figure out the new values of stuff. We'll get more into that. We're going to have a lot more settings episodes dedicated to specific settings. So don't worry. When we're done with our settings menu, we're not done with all of our options and settings. It's just I want to set up a default menu for you here so you know how to control it and use it and set things. And then we can go crazy with specific settings later. Anyway, so when we're looping through our rows, we want to make sure that we don't go through our current row because we actually want to do that one last, no matter where it's at. If we do go through a current row with the way our system is set up, it'll actually overwrite this, and you'll either get a blink, like it will flash to show you that you changed styles on the button, or the button will actually just be the selected and not the filled, both of which are ugly, and they make it look a little bit less professional in this menu if you have these little visual cues that are not quite correct. You know, you see that something is not proper. So we want it to be seamless, and to do that, we need to make sure that the current row is the last one that goes, no matter what row you're on. So I've just added this as an additional little thing. Okay. So off the for loop, just do not equal to integer, and you're going to grab your current row variable and pass that into the other option. As long as it's true that this index is not equal to your current row, you're going to pass the index into determine chosen options, and then pass the current button result of that into display chosen options. Then, once that has completed, you're going to finally do this one more time, but only for the current row as the row to determine. Okay? So you call determine chosen options with current row passed in, and then pass in the result to display chosen options current button. And once you do that, you're good to go. All of your inputs and all your buttons should work and change their styles as you go over them. Test it out, play around with it, make sure everything's working. So what I like to do is I go down to my first button. So first of all, I can see that the correct options that I set in my game instance are highlighted by default. That's a good sign. Now, I like to go and just move over all my options and see that they all work, which they do. Okay. Then I like to confirm an option, make sure the outline on the previous option went away for that row, and then we go to the outline and the fill. Okay. Then when I move off of that option, only the previous option should stay outlined and the other options should just be fills. I know it sounds very, very specific what I'm saying, and it is, but it's important that we get this right because otherwise it will be visually confusing for the player while they're going through the settings menu. Okay, and with that, you are good to go. So now you should be able to confirm any of these, and it should work, with the exception of the infinite button. The infinite button we have to take care of. All right, the last thing to do is to fix our infinite button. So we want to go to our determine chosen options function. And previously, we had it set up where we had all these nodes based on what the round time was giving us. But we can have a round time as well as this boolean is round time infinite as we've set up in the other settings menus. So we have to add one additional check to get our infinite time working as well. So what I've done off of the game instance reference, I've gotten my boolean is round time infinite right here. I brought it all the way over here using reroute nodes, but that's all I'm doing. I'm grabbing this boolean, grabbing a branch, and then here's the logic. So if the round time is infinite, and that's true, then we can go ahead and set it to the round time 5 button that we're returning. If it's false that it's infinite, we're going to just set it to the round time 4 button. Now, technically, when we confirm our selection, if I go to that function, when we're setting the 4 and 5, the round time 4 and 5 buttons, we set the time to 99 seconds both times and then set the boolean is infinite. And that's how we can tell what option we are on. So because of the times being the same on this, we're using this boolean to change them to determine which option has been selected. So I only do this branch on the 3rd index or the 99-second index. Now this 4th element on the switch will most likely never be taken because I'm never going to set the time to be -1. At least that's not what I will be displaying. So you can see how I've set it up here. You can set it up differently if you'd like. I've also defaulted it to be 99 and not infinite, just because I think that'll be the option I choose for the first time for people playing the game. So as a mental note, I've defaulted to that. But that's all you have to do to get this working. Now when you play, see, we can go in here and we can select our infinite option just like anything else. And there you go. And then when you come out and go back into settings, all your options are going to be set as they should. No matter how many times I go into this is a new menu, but it loads with the proper options selected. Alright guys, and that's really all I've got, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do, and I just really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon members and YouTube membership subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support and for getting excited about the series with me. I'm so excited about it. I can't wait to see where we can take it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. So thank you so much for everything. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. It's completely free, and I'd be happy to assist you with any of the problems you had. Like I said, guys, that's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.